Hey everyone, I'm back with another interview, and today we have here with us Miss Bailey O'Brien from New York, who has a fabulous healing story to share. Bailey was diagnosed with stage 3 skin cancer in 2007 when she was just 17 years old. But after getting treatments, her cancer did not shrink but relapsed and progressed to stage 4 melanoma. When she felt that her medical treatments failed her, then she went to Chipsa Hospital in Mexico where natural treatments are given and she cured herself naturally. And today she is here with us to share her fabulous story. Hey Bailey, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining in.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me to.
So, Bailey, just can you tell a bit about yourself? Where are you from, and how did this started? I mean, what cancer did you have, and how did it progress? So, can you just share a bit about yourself and your journey?
Absolutely. My name is Bailey O'Brien. I'm from New York State, about an hour north of New York City. And I was 17 years old when I moved away to college and got my first diagnosis of stage 3 melanoma. It was in December of 2007. And what led up to that, I believe there were multiple factors that influenced my health or the decline of my health up to that point to get a cancer diagnosis. It was just, cancer of the skin, but um, it turned out to spread to other areas of the body. And I was very, very stressed at that point. You have a
Mm.
comment? Oh, okay. Um, so I was in the sun a lot, and I got many sunburns. I got sunburns as a child and as a teenager, and I was a sailing camp counselor for a few weeks in the summer. Um, I also did not have the best nutrition, although I ended up studying nutrition later, and I was always somewhat interested in nutrition.
All
Um,
right.
and I also did not really have a great way to deal with stress. And college was like a huge mountain of stress that I just did not know how to handle. So I ended up with stage 3 melanoma. I had surgery, and then I had interferon treatments that winter. Um, they found a cancerous lymph node in front of my ear. And then after the surgery and interferon, I was getting scans regularly every 6 months or so, and the cancer returned a little over 2 years later. It was like late 2010, mid to late 2010, and it was a tumor behind my jaw. And
All
I
right.
had surgery that September, and unfortunately, the surgeon, who was an excellent surgeon, he missed it by a millimeter. So I had another tumor grow between surgeries, and then I had two tumors removed from that area. That was October 2010, and I had major facial paralysis because the surgery was very um, well, it was extensive, and
Yeah.
they were working around a major facial nerve. So the recovering the nerve function in my face took almost a year. They said it would take a month, but then after healing for 6 weeks from surgery, I did 1 month of radiation treatments, and at that
Okay.
point, because the cancer had returned at all, the chance that it would come back again was even greater, and it would be more, most likely be life threatening and probably take my life. And at that point, I was 20 years old in
All
college,
right.
and it was quite a shock, especially to my doctor, who said I was young and I was athletic. I was on the swim and dive team in college. He didn't think it was going to come back, but it did. Um, but I know that I did not address, some of the root causes of why it came. And because it was so serious, my mom wanted me to see this integrative doctor who was going to help with possibly preventing a recurrence or at least helping with treatment side effects from the radiation. And she did help with that. She gave me supplements to take, which helped with preventing mucositis or getting sores in the back of my throat and in my mouth. Um, and then,
All right.
I finished radiation at the very end of December 2010. And then I went to Hawaii with my teammates for a training trip in January, like a few days later. And I felt a lump under my chin. And
All right.
um, I thought maybe it was just part of human anatomy, but it wasn't, because none of my other friends had that little tiny bump. So when we got back from the trip, I went to see my doctor in New York. I was going to school in Boston, Massachusetts, and about 3.5, 4 hours away. And the doctor biopsied the bump in her office and found that it was melanoma. So that was 2 weeks after I finished radiation, and
All right.
that was very, very shocking, because um, they told me that the cancer, if it did recur, would recur 3 to 5 years later, and it was just 2 weeks later. So that was, um, you know, I just wondered how much more could I keep going, keep fighting, because I just felt like I kept
Yeah.
getting whacked, over and over again. But so I ended up having a scan that same night, and head to toe, to see if there was cancer anywhere else. And it turned out that it was in other areas in my neck, and also 2 spots on my lung and one in my spine. So that was the worst news of my life. But
Yeah.
I still had hope, because my mom got the news first, and she kind of prepared to tell me but at the same time, she had more hopeful information. She had a
All
great
right.
friend she had known for a long time, I knew all my life, who was researching integrative and alternative treatments for other things, but she also found information on cancer. And she said
All right.
she strongly believed that I was going to get better, and we just had to research. Like, they researched their butts off day and night, nonstop, to figure out what was going to help me. And so um, it was at that point, I was more open minded to alternative medicine and treatment options. And we waited a couple weeks, researched a couple weeks before I felt pretty uncomfortable researching further without taking any action, really. So I did do one round of chemo pills called Temodar, which is
All
sometimes
right.
used for brain cancer. Um, and then by the end of that course of chemo pills, I was ready to go to Mexico for treatment for something called Coley's toxins, which is a mixed bacterial vaccine where you inject bacteria that are dead into your body, so that your immune system thinks that there's a threat or a danger, and basically gets activated. And along with the Gerson therapy, or a modified version of the Gerson therapy, which is focusing on detoxing your body from toxins, and then also replenishing any nutrient deficiencies in the body through 13 fresh vegetable juices per day, a plant-based organic, so very, very low sodium diet, um, and then the detoxing is coffee enemas multiple times daily. And then there's other
All right.
supplements and things. But the modified Gerson therapy had a 39% 5-year survival rate in the degree of cancer that I had, the degree of melanoma. And then the Coley's toxins, there was a 60% 5-year survival rate in inoperable melanoma, which is what I had. So combining those two,
All right.
plus some other stuff that I was
Yeah, that,
already
that
doing, that to me, that I found that to be to provide the most hope, because it had the most evidence that we had found, statistically, for melanoma.
yeah.
So that was what I chose to do. This was February 2011. I left for Mexico. I was there for 3 weeks, and then I came home and I continued almost everything at home for another 3 weeks. And in
All
March of
right.
2011, end of March, which was like right before my birthday, I got another scan and it showed that everything was gone except for maybe a tiny bit in my spine.
Wow.
And I had started praying, after the stage 4 diagnosis when I found out it was extensive. I said, God, if you're there, please give me a miracle because I didn't know. I had never really put much thought into what I believed
Hmm.
spiritually, but I was in a desperate place, and I knew that I needed help outside of myself and what humans could do. So that was for me, um, kind of spurred me on into the more spiritual side of things, and that has been a huge part of how I think I've survived long term or lived. And because cancer is, it's, for a lot of us, it's, a sign to let us know that the way that we're living is not good. It's not
Right.
healthy, and it's not going to end well. And for me, it almost, my life almost ended completely at a very young age. Um, and so I had to think about what thoughts I had, excuse me, habits I had,
Yeah.
the things I was eating, um, things I needed to change. And to change is really hard, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's impossible without apart from the grace of God. And so I started seeking God, and in Old Testament Jeremiah 29:13, it says, "You'll seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. I will be found by you," declares the Lord. And so I was seeking with all my heart, and I ended up going to a Bible study for athletes on campus and learned really, um, had an open heart to the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus for the first time, and realized that forgiveness from God is not based on things that we do, which was something that I grew up believing, but it's through the gift of what Jesus did on the cross, which was dying in our place for our sins. And so that whoever believes in him, will not perish, but have eternal life. And so I came to a point where I realized I had to decide what I believed because I had to take a certain direction in my life. Um, and so I realized that there's more evidence for Jesus than against him. And the thing that I found interesting and in common with my alternative cancer treatments was that the world mostly rejects alternative medicine, and it also rejects the Lord Jesus. But I realized if alternative medicine can work for cancer, if it worked for other people, and then obviously it worked for me, then um, yeah, who am I to say that Jesus is not God? And so my
Right.
my faith outweighed my doubts, and I said, okay, I trust that Jesus is God, and He died for me, and I want Him in my life. And so that was the start of um, big change in my life spiritually and emotionally. Um, Mentally, I had so much more hope and joy and peace. I always felt very anxious and afraid, even just from the first moment that I woke up in the
Yeah.
morning. And I had peace knowing that God was for me and He loved me, and there was nothing I could do to make Him love me less or more. And um, um, I just could not mess up my forgiveness and His love, and that was very grounding and um, helpful to me to move forward in my life.
That's a fabulous story, and trust me, I know. I mean, what you must have gone through. So it must have been really hard, and to take a path of to even decide that you have to go through natural treatment itself, it's very, first of all, you need a lot of courage to do that, and then you took that path, and then you cured yourself completely. That itself a very big thing.
Well, thank you. It is a lot of the grace of God.
Right.
Just I'm so grateful that there were people in my life who believed that I could get better and helped to find the information, um, and provided the means for it. And I had to take time off from college and basically just receive a lot of help and love and support. Um, and so it was, and the timing was
Yeah.
was good for me, even though I was very young. It was a time when I didn't really have any responsibility, and
Right. Right.
the stress level really was more minimal compared to what other people have to go through who are adults and married and have jobs and children. So I feel very grateful for that as well.
So what do you think caused you this cancer? I mean, was it the stress levels that you had before your diagnosis, or was it something else? I mean, was it the way you were living, the diet you were having, or was it you feel that genetic is a factor? What exactly was the reason behind you feel was your I mean this cancer happened?
Mm. So I I think it's could be all of the above.
All
I
right.
was just laughing at the last genetic factor. I'm very fair skinned and my skin tends to burn easily. I think it
All
used to
right.
burn more easily than it does now, and I think um, maybe I attribute that partly to how I'm eating compared to how I was eating before,
Hmm.
but also maybe spending more frequent more frequent but shorter durations of time in the sun now.
Hmm.
But anyway, sun exposure, fair skin, stress, which
Yeah.
suppressed my immune system. I know that for certain I've experienced it, even since then in different ways, and can see how on a smaller scale stress can affect our immune
Yeah.
system. Um, and yeah, the way I was eating, and in college, um, like I went like really I had really bad habits with my food because of the amount of stress that I had and just the lack of wisdom and
Yeah.
the way that I handled it.
The
But
teenagers.
yeah, and I had an unlimited meal plan and just ate everything like all day.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah,
And yeah.
nutrition, genetics, stress. Um,
So
that
all of the
was
above combined somewhere contributed to this.
I think so. And it also like
Yeah.
environmental things, like things I was putting on my
Exactly.
body. I was not
Exactly.
I was putting a lot of chemicals on my body, and I was also a diver, so I was in the pool a lot of the time, and there's a lot of chemicals in the pool that and the fumes that you breathe
Yeah.
in, the chlorine. So I don't think that helped.
Yeah. And uh, so when it was stage three, did it metastasize that time as well, or did it progress after you were diagnosed with stage four? How did it go?
Um, so the first time it was stage 3, it traveled from it was the skin right here. It traveled to the lymph node in front of my ear here.
All right.
Um, and then when it came back, it was it was a tumor here, so it had traveled from the original site. And then there was a second one that grew, pretty close to that, right next to my ear.
Okay.
But it had not traveled to other organs at that point yet.
Okay. But it was then that after you went through treatments, it progressed and uh, I mean to different parts of your, I mean this neck and everywhere else, near neck and all these parts, lungs and neck, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, in January 2011, it had spread into this part of the neck, and then it's called the hilar lymph node. on the
right.
lung, and then in the spine.
All right. All right. So, what was what did the doctors tell you about your prognosis? And how will the treatments would work, and what were their opinion on this? I mean, because you went through treatments for 2 years, if I'm not, not 2 years, but one in I think 2007, then you said in 2010, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. The first
So in
diagnosis
between
was
the yeah, in between the cancer was in remission.
right, exactly. So
Okay.
December 2007 was when it started, and then I finished treatment in like late April of 2008. So I had
Okay.
a couple of surgeries and then the systemic treatment,
Yeah.
interferon. And then it came back in 2010. Started treatment September and then finished at the end of December. And
Okay.
then in 2011, January was like I don't know, technically the third diagnosis, but more, I think, a continuation of the second. And then that,
Okay.
um, I continued my treatments for a very long time. I did choles really for 5 years. Not as intense at the end as it was in the beginning by far, but
Hmm.
um, I also continued with lots of supplements, and I juiced,
All right.
although I juiced less and less. Um, but yeah, the last time it was like, okay, this was more of a like a lifestyle change, and I really wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that I didn't just because there's no evidence of cancer on the scan, it doesn't mean that I have some more cancer cells in
Yeah.
the body. They're just not large enough to see. So I want to make sure everything was clean and clear
Right.
and gone for good. I was not gonna take that chance.
And were you aware of, of all the natural remedies for cancer? Or cancer can be approached naturally. Were you aware before 2007? Was there ever even a thought in your head that this can be a route towards healing?
That's a really good question, and I don't think that I was aware of anything, and it didn't cross
Okay.
my mind at all. I was just like, I have some of the best doctors in the world, and they're the ones who know how to treat things, and that's where my mind was at. And then the second time it was pretty much the same thing. I was in school for nutrition and dietetics
Yeah.
to help people with their nutrition, but that was more like an adjunct or with alongside medical treatment. And I believe, like, okay, diabetes, for example, I believe that you could reverse diabetes with proper nutrition, but I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't even it never crossed my mind that cancer could be
Cancer can also.
reversible with nutrition as well, which was something that um,
Hmm.
I think it's now, even with my knowledge and experience with alternative medicine, I don't think it's just nutrition that usually
Hmm.
or ever heals a
It's a lot of
person.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I believe it can play a really big and important role in that.
Yeah. And so you went to Mexico, right? So where exactly did you go in Mexico? And were there any references over there? I mean, specifically, if I say that, were you aware that someone has gotten better over by going to Mexico, or
Mm.
was it a leap of faith?
Well, it was mostly a leap of faith. I mean, and faith is not there is a basis for faith. It's you
Yeah.
know it's a decision when you can't know for certain, but you have enough reason to believe in something, which is what I had. And there were other people who had gone before me who had melanoma who did the same things, and they got
All right.
better. And their information was available, so I did have that to help me take that leap of faith.
Great, great, great. So, great. So let's just talk about your diet. I mean, what exactly was your daily routine? How intensive was it? Because you just mentioned that it took 3 weeks, which is phenomenal. I mean, to be very honest. So definitely you must have done a lot of things.
Yes, I was very, very serious about it. Um,
All right.
yeah, I just had an intense mindset about it. I wanted to get better as quickly as possible. And if there was anything that I was not sure would benefit me or help me to heal, I did not want anything to do with it. Um, so that was, nutrition wise as well. Um, so I started okay, I'll just focus on the nutrition. In the morning, I
Yeah,
had
yeah.
oatmeal, organic, regular rolled oats. I did have
Okay.
some, what's it called, dried fruit with that. And they offered me a little bit of brown sugar, but I didn't take it. And then I also had an orange juice, a freshly squeezed organic orange juice. Everything was organic. And then it was with like half an hour later, I got my next juice, which was either a carrot apple juice or a green juice. And I had six
Okay.
carrot apple juices over the course of a day, and six green juices the rest of the day as well, and alternated between the two. I also added potassium salt to the juices, or they did it for me. Everything was done for me when I was in Mexico for 3 weeks. Um,
Okay.
and between scans, it was 10 weeks. So, and I really
All
think it
right.
took more than 10 weeks for me to heal completely because there was still a tiny bit on my spine that showed up.
Okay.
But in subsequent scans, like even July was the next scan, 3 months later, there was no evidence of anything in the spine.
That's great.
Um, yeah, thank you. But then for lunch, I had Hippocrates soup, which is made with celery root, leeks, parsnips, and like onions. Potatoes is the major source of like calories and protein. Um,
Okay.
and then they would give me a raw salad and some other cooked vegetables. I would have flax oil and brewer's yeast with each lunch and dinner. And lunch and dinner were basically essentially the same. There was soup. They gave me raw salad and some cooked vegetables. And when I went home, I didn't do the raw salad or the other cooked vegetables because it was just a lot of work and time. And
Yeah.
I was already spending 2.5 hours in the morning making my juice. Or if I needed a lot of help when I was going through it. I was very tired from the Coley's toxins injections. So after my mom had to go back to work, because my mom was doing everything for me for about a week when we got back from Mexico. She was
Okay.
giving me my shots. She was making the juice. She helped make the soup and the coffee for the coffee enemas. We had volunteers come from our town to the house. Um, there were on occasion I would just lie down and not do anything because I was very tired, but most of the time I just at least helped a little bit. But um, yeah, so it was very plain. I didn't have the um, I didn't have the dried fruit with breakfast on my own. I just made
Okay.
oatmeal. I mixed in my supplements and then would do the Hippocrates soup. So I'd make the soup broth and I would drink the broth and have a potato with the flax oil and brewer's yeast and then maybe some
Okay.
garlic, maybe some other spices. And that was plus the juices. And then I would have maybe some fruit for a snack here and there and nuts
Okay.
and seeds. And that was basically my diet.
And how many glasses of juices did you had?
13 each day.
13.
Eight
That's
eight
that's
ounces,
huge.
which I don't know how many milliliters that converts to, but
Yeah.
yeah.
13 is huge. It's huge. So
It it
just
was it was work just to drink my juice. You had to really be on top of it every hour drinking it. Otherwise, you'd be up, into the middle of the night drinking it. So I usually finished around 7:30 p.m. I started at like 9 o'clock or so and finished around 7 p.m.
All right, all right. That's huge. So I mean, that's a pretty intensive diet. So did you also have any like animal protein, or did you just chuck it completely?
Good question. I did have a little bit. They gave it to me. I had more in Mexico probably than at home. I wasn't super keen on it, or I was a little suspicious of it. But
Hmm.
so in Mexico, maybe once a week, I would either have fish or a piece of chicken. And then at
Hmm.
home, I think probably the next time I had it was maybe Easter, or yeah, because for my birthday we went out actually to a really cool organic. I think it was a vegan restaurant or maybe
All
vegetarian,
right,
but
all
yeah.
right. Great. And this is what I think it's 10 years now. So you're still cancer free. And what is your diet right now?
Yeah, my diet, it it kind of goes up and down, and I experiment with different things here and there. Um, it's still mostly plant based. I don't eat a lot of animal protein. I have taken up sardines because it's a fish and
Hmm.
it's um easily accessible, and there's no the kind I get, there's no salt added, and it's actually in spring water, which I'm like, I can't believe I found this. It's great. um and I'm getting a little bit more back into like the Gerson side of things with the potatoes. I was eating a lot of beans um for a while. Um
All
Fruit,
right.
I still eat like apples, bananas, berries,
Hmm.
and other veggies and oatmeal. Um and I still struggle with my food a bit. Sometimes eating things that I shouldn't, but um, the Holy Spirit is always there to remind me that you have to stick to this. You have to be good, and because it's not good to do that too often, and it does add up, and it can affect you. And there's a woman actually I'm going to be interviewing soon. Her name is Lisa
All right.
Mendoza. She had melanoma. She did the Gerson therapy as well, and
Oh,
at one
that's
point she went off of her diet and she ended up with a recurrence of melanoma, but then she went back on the Gerson diet and she healed, and
that's
it's I
great.
don't know, 20, 30 years later.
Wow.
So yeah, she has a really great story as well. And for me, it's actually next month will be 15 years since my original diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then we're coming up on 12 years of since that last cancer-free scan. So
Perfect. I mean, you're just young, alive, and thriving.
thank you, by God's grace.
So I just have two more questions. I mean, so the therapies that you said you did, Coley's toxins, so uh, how frequently were they given to you?
I did
And
them
what
three
all
times.
therapies apart from Coley's toxins were you having? I mean, you said you were having high dose vitamin C's as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I did
Yeah.
Coley's toxins 3 times per week. I had
Okay.
injection, an intramuscular injection every morning while I was in Mexico called a liver shot. Basically, had B vitamins to support my liver, and I did do some high dose vitamin C. It wasn't that high; it was maybe 5 or 6 grams. But
All
typically,
right.
when people talk about high doses of intravenous vitamin C now, it's 25, 50, 75, 100
25. Yeah.
grams. Um, and I also did some Laetrile, which is amygdalin, which is found in
Hmm.
apricot kernels.
Apricots.
Yeah. And then I did a couple multivitamin infusions, and I did one hyperthermia treatment, which was basically a hot bath, but I didn't tolerate it very well. So I just did one. And I did have a vaccine made from my own blood called an
Okay.
autologous vaccine, which I got 13 doses of once per week for 13 weeks.
All right.
And yeah, and that was mostly it. Supplements and trying to think positively. It was really neat because this motivational speaker named John Gordon, who's a wonderful man, he came to speak at my school to the athletes the day after I got my diagnosis, and he talked about staying positive and working really hard and working to trying to inspire other people with what we go through. And that was really helpful for me as well, I think, to have a purpose um for what I was going through. Um and now I see it as Romans 8:28. God works all things together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purposes. And Genesis, even as early as the first book in the Bible, Genesis
Yeah.
50:20, with Joseph's story. So, and also as early as the book of Genesis, Joseph's story, he was sold into slavery by his own brothers. Chapter 50 verse 20 says, you meant this for evil against me, but God meant it for good, basically for the preserving or saving of many lives. And so we can all use things that are bad, or God can use all things that are bad for good in our lives and the lives of other people. So yeah,
You're very much familiar with the Bible. I personally love the Deuteronomy and the Leviticus. So
Oh, really?
just wonderful, yeah, wonderful stories and wonderful book.
I love Deuteronomy, but Leviticus is that's very interesting.
I
I do
know.
like that one.
Yeah.
That's neat.
No, even there's
Great.
a book of Job. I don't know whether we have read that part.
Mhm. Yeah.
The book of Job and two other parts. I mean, they're just fantastic. So sometimes I regularly, when I'm looking for some hope and guidance, so I definitely look up to the book of Job, which I find, as a fantastic book.
Yeah. It's great also. I was reading that
Yeah.
one maybe 6-7 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So, so what all supplements did you have when you were doing this thing, or apart from this, any other thing that you also had apart from the therapies and the diet?
I mean, exercise is something that comes
Yeah.
up sometimes. I was not exercising really at the time.
All
But for me, like, physical activity was like going out shopping, or
right.
I mean, that was enough to get me tired just to walk around for a little
All
while.
right.
But
And that's a
that was,
motivational booster as well.
yeah. Or I had a friend visit me when, I think she was very scared that I was going to be gone soon. So she drove from
Okay.
West Virginia, like 8 hours to see me, and spend a few days with me, her and her boyfriend. And we went out to New York City, and so that was very challenging. Just to go to, I mean, I live about an hour from New York City, but it was challenging because with the coffee enemas, doing them 3 times a day, like I felt very connected, or tied to the bathroom and the
Yeah.
kitchen. So I just woke up super early. I did an enema and then waited, made my juice and then did another enema, and then we left for the city and then came back, and I brought all my juice with me, and then came back home and did my third enema at night. But embracing support, letting people in and loving me, and which was something that I think was pretty natural to me anyway. So I'm grateful that wasn't as much of a struggle. as it can be for others. But I think those were probably mainly the other things besides praying and yeah, and just experiencing the grace of
Experiencing
God.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And did
And
you show
it's
your
okay.
reports? Yeah, yeah,
I have
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
funny story about that. So uh I had been praying, God, if you're there, please give me a miracle. God, please heal me. And then one time I was really struggling with a coffee enema. And this was 3 months into doing them 3 times a day. So this is almost 300 enemas in. And I just was really fed up and frustrated with how difficult it was for me to hold the coffee solution. And so I was feeling like the struggle and I was like, God, please help me. And then in an instant, my intestines were settled. And I was like, whoa, was that God? And so that was pretty, stands out in my mind as a God thing that happened during that time that encouraged me to keep pursuing to know him. So yeah, spiritual things were part of it also.
Yeah. And did you show your reports back when you went back to New York after coming from Mexico to your doctors that you were originally getting treated from?
That I what?
Yeah, so you were getting treated from your doctors in New York, right? So you went to Mexico.
Oh,
Did you show the reports that you had a NED?
yeah. I went to them for my scan. I had a doctor. He was excellent. Very kind, compassionate doctor who I consulted. Well, he was one of my original doctors in 2008, and then
All right.
I ended up meeting with another medical oncologist who specialized in melanoma because one of my surgeons had heard that she was doing amazing things, and she publishes studies like insane. I can't even imagine. I follow her on it's researchgate.net, and sometimes I log in there. It's published another article, another one, almost daily. It feels like. So anyway, I started working with her, but then went back to the other doctor because she dropped me as a patient. No hard feelings. I forgive her, love her,
Yeah.
thankful for her. Um, pray for her. And so I went back to this other doctor, and we told him that we were considering going to Mexico. And he said, I don't recommend it. I know people who have gone and they died, but I'll be
All right.
here, if you want to do that. So we went to Mexico, came back, and he ordered a scan for me. And then he was the first person to read it, to see the results. Cause back
Oh.
then there was no electronic medical record, or there was,
Yeah.
but there was no patient portal, or maybe there was, but I don't know. I wasn't aware of it at the time. And so he was speechless. He literally did not know what to say, did not say anything for a while, but he continued ordering scans and blood work. And then after 3 years, he said, you don't need any more scans. And I was like, well, what?
Wow.
I never thought that day was
So
coming.
he was
And then
pretty shocked.
I was so shocked. I thought that was my life up to that point since my first cancer diagnosis. And then a year after that, he said I didn't need to see him anymore. And that was another shock. I thought, I thought I'd need to be there the rest of my life. And I didn't.
That's great. Thank you so much for doing this. I think this was a, fantastic story. And what advice would you like to give people who are watching this video, specifically if someone is diagnosed with cancer and they're looking for, some guidance? So, what advice would you like to give them?
Yeah, good question. Hard to say succinctly, but I would encourage them to have hope that this is something that can be reversed. It can be healed. there is a guy in the Bible named Hezekiah. I think it was this story. I read this maybe in 2018. The Lord told him, your sin is so great. Like, this is, I forget. Oh my gosh, I have to go. This is a good reminder to go back to this passage. Well, I know Hezekiah, he was sick, and the Lord like asked him what he wanted, and he said I think he wanted 16 years. And the Lord said, okay, I'll give it to you. And he lived 16 years before he died. And I think a lot of times the Lord wants us to tell him, he's asking us, what do you want? Like, do you want to live? And if the answer is yes, he'll show us. He can show us how to get there, how to live and how to heal. But he wants, first and foremost, a relationship with us. And that starts with, facing him and admitting like we're not perfect and we need forgiveness, and acknowledging, and for me, this wasn't the first thing that happened in my mind when I was sick. I did acknowledge God and ask for a miracle, but I wasn't at the point yet really where I was talking to him about my sins. But just take a step toward him, and because he's the one who heals. And just know that you're loved. God loves you and wants to do great things in your life, and he will empower you to do what you need to do if you ask him for it. And it's a great and wonderful thing. And life is a gift, and it's really, really hard. But it's worth the fight, and you're worth the fight. You're so loved and cherished and wanted and needed, and very valuable. And there's a great purpose for your life. That's why you're here.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Definitely. I mean, anyone who is viewing this video will definitely feel all the good vibes, all the good things. And it will be very motivating for them to hear your story, which is fantastic. And it's a great story because there's lots and lots of you've been through, and eventually you found your way. So a lot of people are just looking for a single piece of a single thing that can give them hope that another path exists, or there's this hope that natural alternative treatments also exist. A lot of people are just not aware about that as well. So this video will help them a lot.
I pray so. Thank you so much for your encouraging words, Shubham.
Do you also provide coaching also, right?
I do, yes.
All right. So can you just tell a bit about the coaching thing? I mean, where can they find you if someone wants to connect with you?
Sure. They can go to my website, which is my first and last name.com, Bailey O'Brien. Right. I'm sure you'll have a link for spelling.
Yeah. I'll have it in my description. That's completely all right.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bailey.
Pleasure.
It was fantastic talking to you.
And connected. God bless you. God bless everyone.
God bless you too. आई होप दोस्तों आपको ये वीडियो अच्छा लगा होगा। अगर आपको ये वीडियो अच्छा लगा तो इस वीडियो को लाइक करें और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोगों तक शेयर ज़रूर करें। साथ ही नीचे कमेंट करके अपनी राय बताएं कि आपको इस वीडियो से क्या सीखने को मिला। मिलते हैं जल्दी अगले वीडियो में। तब तक के लिए कीप सपोर्टिंग, स्टे हेल्दी।